Howdy y'all, we are continuing our series on the Seraphon battle line. Today we're looking at the mighty Saurus Warriors who didn't get an updated model. Well, at least we can still use all the same Saurus Warriors we got. They did get some new rules, a new updated war scroll. They did not get an extra wound like we were hoping, but I think we do have some ways that we can use them now. That might be better, might not. We'll look at the numbers, see what the numbers say. So let's go ahead and dive into the Saurus Warriors and how they play for us. So they have a movement of 5 inches. They have 1 wound each, and you're going to be taking these in a minimum of 10 models per unit, up to a maximum of 40. And you do get a discount when you take 40. So hordes of Saurus Warriors are encouraged in the point system. They do have a save of 4 up, which is better than it used to be. We did lose the -1 rend ignore, but we basically made it up with the save. I'd take a better save every day over that ignore rend. So the 4 up save is pretty nice, especially when you've got these guys in a big horde. Bravery of 8, so they lost a little bit of bravery in Coalesced. In Starborn, they'll go back up to 10. But 8 bravery is fine for this. They have 2 different weapon profiles. You can take the club or the spear, and I think that's what we're going to look at heavily in this video, is which one is better. Is it the club or the spear, and when do you use one or the other? Because they have a big stat difference. The club, 1 attack, 4s and 3s, -1 rend, 1 damage. The spear, the difference is the 2-inch range. It still has 1 attack, 4s and 3s, no rend this time, and 1 damage. So is the extra range worth losing the rend? Rend's pretty big right now, and especially with the armies that we got out there that have high armor. But we'll see. We'll run the numbers here in a minute and see. We also got powerful jaws, 1-inch attack on those, 1 attack, 5s, 4s, no rend, 1 damage. So you have to choose one of those Celestite weapons, and everybody gets the jaws. One model can be the Saurus Alpha. They get an extra attack with their Celestite weapon. One model in 5 can be the Icon Bearer, and that is the banner for this unit. Does the same thing as all the other banners in Seraphon do. -1 to bravery for enemies within 6, not stackable. So it is nice. Always remember to do that because it's useful. War Drummer, 1 in every 5. It can be a War Drummer. You get to re-roll your charges. I kind of hated losing the old War Drummer where you can double your movement. But the re-roll charges is pretty good because you don't have to use a command point on it. And abilities, Ordered Cohort. Add 1 to the attack characteristics of their Celestite weapon when they have more than 15 models. 15 or more models. So we're also encouraged to take hordes here. So they get cheaper when you take a max unit of 40, and when they're over 15, you get +1 to their attacks, which is pretty good, especially if you're fighting in a horde and you're getting 2 Celestite weapon attacks, and if you're taking them in Coalesce, you get 2 jaw attacks. So now the horde has 4 attacks for each model in it. Not too bad. Not bad. We can work with that. So let's see what we're going to do damage-wise just based on the War Scroll. So if we look at the War Scroll, clubs, we're gonna focus on that 4 up save as kind of the average, and that'll give us a good gauge on the damage everything does. So the clubs against the 4 up save does 3 damage, and the spears versus a 4 up save does 2.5. So at the minimum models for a unit, the clubs come out but with 0.5 point of damage more than the spears. And you might think, why in the world would we ever take warriors in a minimum unit when they get all the horde bonuses and discounts? And it'll actually come up, because if you're running Starborn, you might end up summoning some warriors in. 10 warriors is only 10 celestial conjuration points, so probably by the second turn you'll be able to summon in some warriors, or first turn if you're real lucky. You can also summon in 20 for 20. I don't know that I'd do that unless you just really need the extra attacks. There's some better stuff to summon in that range, namely the Bastiladon, which is my favorite model. But you'll be summoning them here. You'll also be summoning them from the Engine of the Gods. So if you do take an engine in your list, you're going to need to have at least a couple units of Saurus Warriors as possible summoning bait, because that's what gets summoned from the engine now. You don't really have a choice. It's going to be 10 warriors, and so you're probably gonna want those as the club versions, so you can end up with some rend. Unless you just really need to stick them in a skinny place and attack from the second row and get the spears, but at that point, it's probably not gonna make too much of a difference. So at the minimum unit of 10, the clubs are better. So we'll see if that continues on as we go out. So if we look at the War Scroll, when they get up and over 15, then we're going to get an extra club attack. So if we're doing 20 models in a unit, so we're taking, we're doubling up that unit or going higher, the clubs, you're really only going to get to attack 1 rank deep. Because of the 1-inch range, these warriors are on 32 mils. You're not going to be able to get your second row in. And so I'm going to run the numbers using 10 models on the front row, 10 on the back row, on the second row, and then the rest won't even factor in because you can't get over a 2-inch range if you have the spears. So for the clubs, when we run the math, we'll do the front 10 for the clubs and jaws. For spears, we'll do the front 20 for spears and then the front 10 for jaws. So just kind of giving you an idea of how the math is shaken out. I'm not going to run math for all 40 because you're never going to get all 40 in combat unless you're just smashing up against another horde, in which case you'll probably lose because our hordes aren't probably going to out horde other horde armies. So here's our number: 20 plus warriors with clubs fighting 1 rank deep, 20 warriors with spears fighting 2 ranks deep, and we start to see a little bit of a pull away from the spears, with the clubs getting 5 1/4 and spears getting 7 1/2. Now, these are pretty bad numbers, especially for 200 points of warriors, and they're getting double the attacks, but it just doesn't matter at this point. We've got to pump more buffs into these warriors. As with a lot of Seraphon units, their war scrolls by themselves are pretty bad. You're not going to pay 200 points for 7 damage anywhere in any list. That's just terrible. But once we start layering on our synergies, then they get to be quite a bit better. So we'll kind of look at those. First, we're going to look at the battalions that the warriors can go into. And we got 2 here, one for Coalesced and one for Starborn. I've left the Coalesced one bigger because it's the one you'll be running it. And you've got one Source Old Blood, which it can be either the one on foot or the one on Carnosaur, because you can ignore the subtext on the War Scroll for the Source Blood on Carnosaur via the core rulebook. Or you can run a Source Sunblood, which I don't think you'll ever see the Sunblood. The Old Blood is just better. Its ranges and its buffs are easier to put in than the Sunbloods. So you'll see the Old Blood, specifically the Old Blood on Carnosaur, because in this battalion, the Old Blood on Carnosaur gets to be pretty awesome. 3 warrior units. This is in Coalesced, obviously. Improve the rend characteristics of Jaws weapons used by the units of this battalion by 1, which is okay. That gives, if you're running clubs, now you've got clubs that have rend and jaws that have rend. But the jaws attack is pretty bad. It's 5s and 4s base, and so adding rend to that, I mean, who cares? It's on 5s. We have ways to get that hit down lower, so that'll help. And if you're running hordes, you're gonna have your front 10 in Coalesced. They're gonna have 2 attacks each, so that's 20 attacks that have rend, so it'll do some damage. The one in Starborn is actually so much better. Same requirements, but you're improving the rend characteristics of your Celestite weapons by 1. Why? Come on. I feel like every time I'm reviewing these Saurus units, the battalions are better for them in Starborn than Coalesced. Why? Coalesced is where you want your Saurus, not Starborn. Starborn's for your skinks. Saurus need to be over here in Coalesced. If this had been switched, this battalion would be awesome because now you're giving me spears with -1 rend, so I'm hitting 2 ranks deep with rend. I like that. Or if you want to go crazy and get clubs with -2 rend, that would be cool too. I mean, it would have its place. But as is, we're stuck with the one that gives us jaws by 1. The secret here is that the Saurus Old Blood on Carnosaur gets to be pretty awesome in this battalion because now his jaw has -2 rend, which it should have anyway. But in this battalion, he gets to be a legit, that jaws gets even scarier, so I like that. So I think you're going to see this Sunclaw Temple Host run if you're running a bunch of warriors, or if you're going crazy and want to have to. You can make it work in Starborn. You just gotta put in a lot more buffs, and you've gotta spend more command points for stuff that just happens naturally over in Coalesced and Codal's Claw. So I don't know. I wouldn't run them in Starborn, even though that extra rend on the weapon is juicy. Just go ahead and take the one over jaws and work with it. All right, so we're gonna start looking at some of the numbers here. And this is we're gonna run all the buffs in Coalesced with Codal's Claw and then with the battalion. So these are the things that we're gonna do. So right here we see the damage is already improving. Spears stays ahead of clubs here, and you'll see that continue as the 4-up damage for the clubs is at 9 and spears is at 12. So just by adding it in Coalesced, so we get our extra jaws attacks. Codal's Claw, we get +1 to hit on the charge, and the battalion, we're doing quite a bit more damage. So we're almost doubling up our damage from outside of that combo. So that's already doing pretty good. But we're going to keep layering it on. We're going to take our Old Blood, who's in that battalion, and use his command point. So his command point's for another +1. So now we're getting all of our stuff hitting on +2 to hit. So if you look back at our War Scroll, those jaws, which have rend, are now at +2. So you're hitting on 3s and 4s, which is much better. And our clubs or spears are hitting on 2s. You can get this number lower if you want to, but it's not going to help anything. So your jaws are gonna get down to 2, but your weapons are going to be maxed out at a 2-up. There, so I think that's the limit of what we're going to do with those command points is from that Old Blood is giving him +1 to hit. We have other ways to get that, but we're not gonna use it. So we're looking good. We got that +1 to hit. Now we're getting 11 from the clubs and 15 from the warriors. So the spears. The spears are starting to outpace the clubs even more as we're getting further ahead. So good damage there from them. Let's keep going. We're going to add another buff. So this one, I want to add in another Carnosaur. So we're going to add in another Scarvet. We're going heavy Saurus in this list. Taking 2 Carnosaurs, and we're going to buff up these units. So if we add the exploding 6s to hit, create an extra hit on these Saurus Warriors, now we're getting even more hits out of this. We got 14 damage from the clubs and 18, almost 19, from the spears. So spears are still taking it, even with the explosion from the 6s to hit. Another unit I really like is the Skink Star Priest. We're going to add that on here. On the Skink Star Priest, gives us 6s to wound equal immortal. And so now we're going to have exploding 6s to hit and exploding 6s to wound. They do different things. We get extra hits on the first one, and the wounds cause mortals. But now, just the sheer number of attacks from the spears is pulling ahead. You can see that if you're fighting something with a low save, those spears are gonna do a ton of damage. But even if you're fighting something with a low save, just the sheer quantity of attacks from the warriors is going to be doing more than the clubs are. And so there's pretty much no case in which clubs in a horde is going to be any better. But we're not done yet. Let's Since we got a Skink Star Priest, we're going to go ahead and try to cast the spell Hand of Glory so we can reroll ones. If that doesn't work, we'll just use a command point because we love command points in this army. And get those reroll hit rolls of 1. And that just gives us a little bit extra. It wasn't a huge buff from 28 to 32, but you know, an extra 4 damage or so, we'll take it. The best one is that high end range. If you're fighting something that doesn't have a real good armor save, it'll do some extra damage there, which is nice. So overall, you know, that's only 2 command points spent on a horde. Most of the buffs we can get for pretty cheap just by putting it in the right list and then using those 2 command points, which in Kotal's Claw more than likely we'll get one of those back, and if we kit it out right with Aether Quartz Brooch, maybe we might get the other one back, but we'll have plenty of them swimming around anyway. So it's not too bad from our horde. We're pumping out 32 damage on the front lines from the 2 ranks with spears, and so not too bad. If you do want to take clubs, I mean they're still pumping out enough damage. Only your front row's getting in, but they're doing 23 versus a 4 up. So it's not bad, but the spears in the hordes are definitely the way to go. So let's look at a list here, a sample list. I wanted to just max out this battalion. So here's what I'm going to run for this list. We're going to do Kotal's Claw, Lord Croak, obviously, because we need our command point generator there, plus our Mortal Wound Comet spell from him to take out the enemy support heroes. I'm going to take 2 Carnosaurs, 1 Scarvet, 1 Old Blood. The Old Blood is going to be the general. He's the one in the battalion. So he'll get the Kotal's Claw command trait to give us our command traits back on or command points back on a 4-up. And then also the extra damage on Mortals artifact. And then my other artifact would be on the Scarvet. I would probably give it either Sword of Judgment if I fight a lot of monsters, because he can have a lot of attacks on his spear, or give him an Aether Quartz Brooch if I just really want to use him as a support hero and I want him to be giving me back command points to just be handing back out to the warriors. Skink Star Priest, because that guy is just overall pretty awesome. He can hand out his mortals to wound. He's got a good spell, and he also can generate an extra command point on a 5-up. So you do have some great ways to get command points there. Then I'm just taking 3 max blocks of 40 Saurus Warriors inside the Sunclaw Temple Host, and that comes out to a perfectly even 2,000 points. I would like to fit a couple endless spells in here, but just not enough if I really want to max out the warriors. So let's take a look for a second and see what that looks like on the table. Do we have room for that many warriors? All right, let's take a look here in Tabletop Simulator. All right, so I got it loaded up here, and whew, look at that. So let's assume that you get your Realm Shaper engine on your side of the table, which, thanks to brilliant rules writing, is a 50-50 shot. But here we are set up at a 12-inch deployment, and we've got 120 warriors into our deployment zone. Now, there's no terrain on this table, but look at, I mean, this takes up pretty much your entire deployment. You could pack them in there a little tighter if you needed to. They are kind of spaced out right now, just based on, because I didn't want to spend the time to group them that close together. But note that you are going to run short on room if you're going to put in 120 32 mil bases. So you are going to have to worry about that. I don't think 3 max units is probably the way to run this battalion. But it does look pretty awesome on the table having 120 warriors on the table. So it would be a fun one to run. Let me know if you've run 120 warriors in your list before. All right, let's go back. All right, so to wrap up, our warriors, they can do some damage. We definitely want to take them with spears if you're taking a horde. If you're taking MSU units of warriors, opt for the clubs. The clubs are best in small units. Spears are definitely the better option for your hordes. Get those buffs going, get that damage pumped out, and yeah, have fun. Paint up some warriors. All right. See you guys later.